Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Chris with Inside the U. Today in this video, I want to talk about the three quarterbacks who I expect to participate in spring practices. I think it's going to be a tight battle in the spring, and I want to break down all three quarterbacks. First off, be sure to hit the like button if you like this video and subscribe to the channel because it helps out a ton. If you have any more questions about the Miami Hurricanes, check out InsideTheU.com and let's get right into it. The reason why I expected only three quarterbacks to participate in spring ball is because D'Eriq King is obviously out for the spring, out for quite a bit of time after tearing his ACL in the Cheez-It Bowl against Oklahoma State. However, there's only three because I expect N'Kosi Perry, although he is on campus and he did take his name out of the transfer portal, I do expect him to not participate in spring practices based on a conversation that I have had with a source. So that leaves Tyler Van Dyke, Peyton Matocha, and recent signee Jake Garcia as the three scholarship quarterbacks who will participate in spring practices expected to begin in mid-March. Okay, so let's get right into it with Tyler Van Dyke. He was a Hurricanes third string quarterback last season. He played a little bit. He's a guy that a lot of people are excited about. Former four-star recruit. Last year was his first season at Miami. He's a guy that has good size. I saw him last spring in practices before they were cut short. I was impressed with his arm, and I felt like he was getting better each time out that we got out there to watch spring ball. In the fall, the thing that stood out to me talking to the coaches was offensive coordinator Rhett Lashley certainly brought up the point that he really liked that Van Dyke was spending a lot of time with starter D'Eriq King, going to film room sessions with him, trying to learn as much as he could with him, and he felt that was a good trait for Van Dyke in terms of his development and his learning process. I also think that's a good sign for Tyler. That's a good sign for any quarterback moving forward in their careers, is really taking an understanding to the playbook and what an upperclassman with the success that King has had, and really just trying to learn as much as he can. I feel like that's a good sign for Van Dyke. I think that now he has the upper hand going into spring ball ahead of the other two quarterbacks. Based on where he was on the depth chart last year, he is going to be the one to watch for in the spring. And if you're out there just paying attention to the team, he did switch his number to number 9. He did play sparingly a little bit towards the end of the year in a brief series. Didn't look great, but again, it was just a brief series. So we'll see how he does in the spring. Very curious to see how he progresses. And I think he knows that he's going to get a great opportunity in the spring, which is expected to be 15 practices, just like it's been in the past. Speaking about Peyton Matocha, he's the oldest of the group. He only has a year more of experience than Van Dyke as a redshirt freshman last year, and then obviously continuing into this year because last year's eligibility does not count. Matocha also played briefly last year, and immediately after the year was over, and Matocha's a guy that's not as highly regarded as Van Dyke or as Garcia, even though he accounted for 49 touchdowns as a senior in high school football there in Houston. So there are things to like about Peyton. He also can run the ball. He's shown that at the high school level. He's just not as highly regarded as the other two, but he's one to watch for. And what I want to get to is after the season was over, Matocha's a guy because of the quarterback movement, because King was allowed to come back. I was a little curious if Peyton was a guy that would just move on with his career. You know, spent 2 years at Miami, maybe it didn't work out, different coaching staff than what he arrived on. But I immediately was told from a source that Matocha was there to compete, wanted to have a really good offseason, had no intentions of transferring. This was immediately after the year, and I felt like that was a good sign. And basically he really wants to compete and then earn a role for the 2021 season, really help out the team, possibly earn a key role as a backup or even as a starter, as all of these guys are, because D'Eriq King might not be ready for the opener. It's still too early to tell, although King, and everybody involved definitely hopes he will be for that September 4th opener against Alabama. However, if not, one of these three guys will have to take the field for the start against Alabama. So Matocha is a guy that can run a little bit, pass a little bit. He has a little bit more experience, so he's one to watch for, maybe as a sleeper candidate to win the starting job. And it reminds me of, and not to compare him to Jarren Williams, but Jarren Williams was certainly a sleeper in that competition with N'Kosi Perry and Tate Martell, and he rose to earn the starting nod 2 years ago. So just because a guy is not being thought of as much as the other guys doesn't mean he can't rise above, especially because Van Dyke and Garcia don't have a ton of experience. They just have a lot more name recognition based on their recruiting status. As far as Jake Garcia, he's a guy that really intrigues me watching his film with what he did this past year, transferring to Georgia, moving to Georgia as a high school senior from California. He played at 2 high schools, played in Loganville for Grayson, helped them win a state championship. But he started his career off at Valdosta, only played 1 game there, and then moved on based on eligibility stuff. However, I don't think it's really a detriment to him that he's played at the 2 high schools or even moved across the country. I actually feel like that is something to benefit him. I feel like he did a good job stepping in at both spots, earning the starting job and being productive around a new environment in a completely new part of the country, and new teammates and everything like that. And then once again, played pretty well. You know, he's a guy that does a good job throwing the ball downfield. That's something I really like about him. I also like how he slides in and out of the pocket to create more space. And I think that's something that he can certainly grow upon when he gets to Miami, or now that he is at Miami as an early enrollee, and as he gets into spring ball. You know, that's something that certainly Rhett Lashley will work with him even more, because Jake is not the most mobile quarterback. It's not a strength of his. However, I think he's got enough to get positive yardage. I also think he's got enough positive footwork to get yardage if he needs to scramble. And you saw some of that at the high school level. So once again, I think Jake is certainly a guy to watch for. I don't know how quickly he will adapt to the Miami offense. We have seen quarterbacks in the past, recent past, Miami starters as freshmen, guys come in and do well. Brad Kaya was the last one that did really well as a young guy. Ja'Cory Harris was young when he earned the start as a freshman. So there have been guys that have earned starts as freshmen. We'll see if Jake can grow into that. But certainly, once again, all 3 of these guys, even though the 2 of the guys have been in college, there's not a lot of experience with the 3 guys. So it'll be very interesting to see how spring ball goes. You can certainly have a favorite or a front runner. I mentioned Van Dyke being that guy, a little bit of an edge just because he was 3rd on the depth chart this past season. So certainly the coaches like what he has in terms of ahead of Matocha. And then he will certainly begin the spring ahead of Garcia along with Matocha just because of the experience. But it will be very interesting to see, especially if they get all 15 practices in. I'll be looking to see the progress, the development, listening to the coaches to hear what they think about each of the quarterbacks, and then also for the statistical updates that we'll get. Maybe that will help determine who is actually out in front. The players are typically, when there's a quarterback battle at Miami, they're typically pretty quiet. They try not to say or try not to promote one guy over the other. And certainly all 3 of these guys are battling for that true backup spot behind D'Eriq King. Everyone knows D'Eriq will be the starter when healthy. However, you have to look at this situation as one of these 3 guys is potentially being the starter. Going back to N'Kosi Perry a little bit, tracking back on his career at Miami, played a lot as a backup. He earned 9 starts. You saw him in the Cheez-It Bowl go in for D'Eriq King. D'Eriq had already mentioned that he was going to go ahead and come back from Miami. Then he tears the ACL. A little bit of uncertainty of what exactly was going to happen. What was going to happen with the quarterback situation? Would N'Kosi come back? So N'Kosi pretty quickly determined that he would enter the transfer portal, that he would move on from Miami, which you can understand why. He'd have to come back again as a redshirt junior and then, essentially sit behind King. But basically entered his name into the portal. Then he went ahead and withdrew it. And the plan for N'Kosi is to go ahead and spend the spring semester at Miami, graduate with a degree. However, once again, like I said earlier in the video, he is not expected to participate in spring practices based on a source that I have contacted, and I believe that that makes a lot of sense for both parties. If N'Kosi is going to go ahead and move on, it makes sense that he doesn't participate in spring ball, and you can understand the coaches, they don't want to give him reps when they've got to get one of these guys ready for that true number 2 spot. I don't expect one of the 3 guys to earn the actual nod as the number 2 quarterback or the number 1 out of the depth chart, however you want to look at it, coming out of spring. I don't expect anything to be determined until fall practices, before the season begins, because I think this is an ongoing competition and one that's very interesting because, again, it's not for that starting spot, that true starting spot behind King. So that's all I have for you guys. Definitely appreciate everyone for watching the video, checking out InsideTheU.com as always, and the message boards. If you have any comments, maybe I'm curious to know, who do you think is the best quarterback of the three? Who do you think will be the best in the future? Drop in the comments below because I love seeing what you guys have to say. Thanks again for watching, and take care.